Hello, class, and welcome to our last book of the study of the Pauline epistles. And I trust that this has been as rewarding for you as it has been for me. Certainly, to have a better understanding of the circumstances of Paul's writings, it has greatly enlarged my understanding of the passages and has assisted me in keeping the passages in better context as I'm rendering doctrinal understanding. And I trust that you can have a lifelong passion to do the same. So I trust that in our study here in these next few minutes, you're going to gain a whole new appreciation for Paul as we consider his circumstances in this last book that we understand that he wrote. So let's get into our study, if you will. Certainly, Paul is opening up his heart and he is saying things in this letter to his dear, dear young friend Timothy. He's telling Timothy, I fought the good fight. I have finished my race. It has been run. He's clearly explaining that his course is drawing to an end. He's not bragging, but he's stating a fact. I have kept the faith as he's been on these journeys. And we're going to speculate some about the journeys that he accomplished in his latter days, keeping in mind that a lot of what we are about to study, considering the circumstances surrounding Paul, we must interpolate, if you will, because these events have happened after the time of the writing of the book of Acts, and we don't have the historical book of Acts to go back and trace the roots. So we must take the epistles, including this last one, and we must try to piece together what's going on in Paul's life for this dramatic change that happened between 1st and 2nd Timothy. As far as the background goes, Paul's in prison in Rome while writing this letter. The conditions of his imprisonment are now most dire. He is now he is not looking toward release, but as we see at the end of this book, he is looking unto death. There is no reason. It's not that he has given up, but he has accepted the fact that it appears as though he has reached the end of his journey. This is the last known inspired writing prior to his martyrdom. He's abandoned, lonely, cold. He's without his books, his writings. He desires to be physically and emotionally comforted. Yet in that situation, his desire is not to dissuade him from doing what he does best, and that's exhorting the brethren. And in this case, primarily, we're talking about Timothy. Even in his last days, in his worst situation, he's thinking more about others, including Timothy, than he is about his own dire. Now, we're going to make some reasonable assumptions within the facts, and we're going to clarify some directions that could not be a fair assumption. Since Paul's imprisonment is in complete contrast to that in 1 Timothy and Titus, it is not reasonable to assume it is the same imprisonment. There's an incredibly different contrast that we'll talk about. And since we have two letters, we know there is a period of time between these two letters. It appears as though that there is a significant period of time between them. That's why on the second bullet, Hebert says, and I believe that Hebert makes a lot of sense, that if external sources outside of the Bible are correct, and Paul did indeed travel to the west, maybe even Spain, as he had commented on in the book of Romans, then the trip to Spain, if indeed he took it, would have occurred between the writings of 1st and 2nd Timothy. Why do we believe that this is a preferable way of looking at it? Because if he did travel to Spain, this would allow time for the shift within the Roman Empire that left a favorable position toward Judaism and the church or Christianity to persecution of Judaism and especially the church. Now, if we follow this assumption a little further, while Paul was in Spain, Nero began his what is known as the religio illicita, or the designation of Christianity as impermissible or illegitimate. When Paul returned to the churches in the East, and let's assume that that would have been the spring of AD 66, his enemies could take advantage of the turn of events, arresting him again with confidence of a conviction. Now, as we've studied, we have seen a stark contrast between what happened in Philippi, where he refused to leave just because the lictors gave him permission to go. He would not leave until the praetors come and practically begged him to go. And even then, he left in his own timing because he was trying to make a point that Christianity, the church, is a credible institution, a credible religion, that there are Roman citizens that embrace Christianity, and it is also a legitimate religion. Now, we've gone from Philippi, where Paul first went into Macedonia, to the point of his last book where it's illegal to call yourself a Christian. And we're going to talk more about that. Once that change took place, all of the Judaizers, but not only Judaizers, but those with Hellenistic leanings, those who were Caesar worshippers, they would be ganging up on Paul at this time, and they would know that we can take Paul down now because what he is boasting of is now considered to be illegal in the empire. Now, I mentioned Nero, and when we talk about Nero, it's worth pulling off here for just a little while.